And so when I had my first meeting with him, he says, "Do you trust my judgment?" So I said, "No." After I said that, I noticed like there was a little bit of a tension in the room. And so I said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, people are complaining that you picked your friends to be in cabinet." And then so the conversation went on and I said, "Look, let me just tell you something right away. If you're looking to fill any gender or racial gaps in your cabinet by appointing me, choose someone else. I am the right hand person of a leader of a G7 country, and the politics within this space made me feel small. I don't want to play games when I'm at work. I'm not here because I have breasts and dark skin. I'm actually here because I want to do the work." He did so many international events, and I was invited to three, and they're all Black focused events. I wasn't allowed to speak in the House of Commons to answer questions on behalf of the Prime Minister.
When you had a speech, could you create your own speech, or would Trudeau write it down and tell you what to do?
So in the beginning, yes. And I remember them giving me one speech in this particular context, and I read it. I changed the end of the speech. Not a good idea. And he said to me, "Oh, no, you can't announce that you're not running again because I can't have two powerful women of color leave at the same time. Do I have the political will to do what is best for the people, or do I do what is best to get me reelected?" We were just sort of playing games with communities.
Yeah, because you stuck to the literal definition of democracy, which is that politicians are there to serve. Maybe that was a mistake. That was a big misunderstanding. If we stick to this literal definition, we get a whole new personality of politicians.
So what I want to say is,
We do have one problem, though. I cannot pronounce parliamentary secretary for the life of me.
PSPM, and when you say it, then I will say parliamentary secretary.
Okay, let's do that. Good. Because I've been trying to practice it and I figured, should I avoid it just as much as possible? English is not my native language. First, I want to start with your story, a little bit of background so that the audience kind of gets the feeling of who you actually are. I know you've been open about your personal experience with mental health challenges, and you actually helped destigmatize discussions about mental health in Canada, which is pretty awesome. So talk to me a little bit about that. And also, you said that you felt some systemic racism and exclusion as a young Black girl in predominantly white spaces. So what was that experience like?
So I would say that, I've always faced various challenges in my life. I'm not afraid of challenges. But when I got out of university and started working, I was working in owned a business as a site management organization for neurological research. And those spaces they don't look like me. Like, they're predominantly dominated by men and predominantly dominated by white men. And so I had to really learn early how to navigate that space as an entrepreneur. And I mean that it does play a little bit on your mental health because you're always sort of, can I do this? Am I doubting myself? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Are they going to let me in the front door? So I think that, throughout life you have these challenges, but I think in consistently monitoring your self-awareness as well as your own grit, you get through it.
This may be a bit of a digression from the topic, but I just remember actually I practice boxing, and in my boxing group, I'm actually objectively well trained and better than majority of guys that I train with. However, considering the fact that I happen to be the only female, it's still harder for me to gain respect, even being objectively better, while them knowing I am objectively better. Should I even show my skills even, right? So after a while, I started noticing I'm degressing as I was training. So I really needed to have this mental flip, this mental switch of, okay, if I'm not, I'm not going to fall into this rabbit hole because I'm going to get worse. And so you made a commitment to fight for inclusion. And I think that you did it better than anyone else, because these early experiences kind of fueled your resilience. And I think that someone who hasn't really felt it cannot do it as efficiently. But I think that unpleasant childhood experiences or trauma is an extra fuel in business. And I'm not saying that people should, I'm not promoting traumatizing your children, but, oftentimes um, I wouldn't necessarily think that it's totally a good thing to get rid of all the trauma just quite yet, because sometimes you need that in order to prove yourself. I need this to prove to my dad or my mother or whoever, and that gives you that additional advantage in life sometimes. There's like a correlation between very successful men and their relationship with their absent fathers, right? Obviously it's not a healthy thing, but it's a push, right? It's a fuel that other people don't have. It is a spice. So
It gets you going, it pushes you forward. And that switch that you were talking about is called a gestalt switch, where you see the world differently. Yeah, so when you see that Reuben vase, you see the one picture. If you look at it once, it has a vase. You look at it another way, it has like two faces on the sides. Your brain actually has that switch. And I think what happens sometimes is we see the world in this beautiful place where everything's rosy, and then you realize, oh my God, even though I'm that good, even though I'm better than some of the men I'm sparring with, I'm like treated, or I feel like I need to sort of make myself smaller to fit into this space. So you see both sides of the world. You see the beautiful world, but you also see the world that is not necessarily designed for you. And when you see that, then you could say, how am I going to show up? That's when you make the decision. How am I going to show up here? Am I going to continue to play small? So when you have the gestalt switch, the way I interpret it is when you start to really see the world for what it is, or your situation for what it is, and then you can make a decision of how you're going to play in that space.
they made an experiment where half of the class was told that they're above intelligent and the other half of the class was told that they're below intelligent. And after a while, the test results showed exactly what they told them.
And the other half of the class kept looking at the other half going like, how are you getting these answers? And by the last question, they should have been able to get the answer, and they just gave up.
And when it comes to your way of battling inclusion, I think that there there seemed to be a misunderstanding in what you thought fighting for inclusion means. I'm being cynical, but what you thought it means fighting for inclusion, but the political system was like, oh no, 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 Celina, this is just for show. You know how sometimes someone presents you with a problem and then you start fighting solutions only to find out they actually just wanted to talk. So yeah, inclusion was not including you in a conversation. It's including you in a room where they can take a photo. Do you think now you're out of politics, you went more into writing and public speaking? Is it kind of like once you get in there, it's kind of addictive though? I mean, the politics, it's like you get bitten by a bug and then it's nostalgia ever after.
You know what? So I like the policy. So the ability to influence people's lives through policy, your ability to help them when they need it, the ability to present national strategies that are going to help people when they're, often marginalized or, down on their luck. It's the politics that I don't like. And it's the same politics that happened to you in the gym. It's the same politics that happens within politics, where there's this play, there's this jockeying for, I'm supposed to be better than you and you're better than me, and I need to like now undercut you so that you're not better than me, kind of thing. And that, I think, poisons a lot of relationships. It poisons our ability to do well for our society. The politics that existed within our center of democracy in Canada, at me as a parliamentary secretary to the prime minister. I am the right-hand person of a leader of a G7 country. And the politics within this space made me feel small. The policy that we can enact is brilliant. It's beautiful. I love that. That's what I love. That's what I'm driven by. The politics, I don't want to play games when I'm at work. I'm at work. I'm a smart woman. I'm not here to play games. I'm here to either present a national brain strategy, a national senior strategy. I'm here to really make sure that the knowledge that I have is not the best knowledge, but I know that my knowledge could contribute to the betterment of this country. And that's why I'm here. I'm not here to play games with you. I'm not here for the photo op. I'm not here because I have breasts and dark skin. I'm actually here because I want to do the work.
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Starting therapy can be hard. The right therapist for you may not be in your area. BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy session as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link helps you support this channel, and it also gives you a 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Again, go to betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link gives you 10% off your first month of therapy.
You know, I in my naivety, I guess, I believe that most people, almost everyone, gets into politics for a good cause, and then somewhere down the road, it trips, and I don't know if they hit the wall of a system or their personality changes. Based on personalities that you encountered in politics, would you say that most of them want to do good and are limited by the system, or at some point they become addicted to the power?
That's a good question. I think a little bit of both. So everybody wants to do good. But they want to do good. Let me put it this way. Do you want to do good for your own personal agenda? Or do you want to do good because you want to help other people? So if you're just plowing through because you want to get your own particular thing across and you want to be written in history because you came forward with this bill, I think you're going to hit system barriers and you're going to hit personality barriers because people want to be a little bit more collaborative. So if you're in there because you know your idea is going to help millions of people and it's going to be, it's going to change Canada for the better or anywhere in the world for the better, then I think you have a little bit more ease. The challenge is that in order to make that happen, you have to stay in power. It's very difficult to get your bill across if you're not in power or you're a minority in the government, right? So there's a play here where it comes to personality as an individual wanting to have some kind of power or authority, and then within a party wanting to have power to stay relevant as government. And that juxtaposition between, do I have the political will to do what is best for the people, or do I do what is best to get me reelected? Just do enough to get reelected. And so that means, I'm not disrupting. I'm not really doing the policy to the best of my ability because I don't have to. I could get reelected with doing half. I don't have to push the barriers, and that for me was very disappointing. It was disappointing to see that as a majority government, as a Trudeau government, as a feminist government, as a government that valued diversity as our strength, that we were just sort of playing games with communities that needed the support.
Yeah, because you stuck to the literal definition of democracy, which is that politicians are there to serve. Maybe that was a mistake. It was a big misunderstanding. If we stick to this literal definition, we get a whole new personality of politicians, because the system being as it is now, it's one of those fields that attracts a lot of narcissists. I mean, it says a lot about something, just someone who thinks they should be a prime minister. It will attract a certain type of people. And I think also it's important to distinguish between narcissistic traits, which can be common in leadership, and narcissistic personality disorder, Trudeau-ish. So in an ideal democracy, the incentives for entering politics would shift from what they are now. So instead of this self-centered desire for influence, politicians would be motivated by a sense of duty and responsibility, right? Um, and and I think it's also, with people like you who get in there to serve, and then you have other people who get in the same field for themselves, you're going to get a clash. It's either people have to be there and know, okay, we are here to serve, or they can say, we are just here for us, and we'll get along because we know what the hell is going on. So you went in there because of the issues that you thought were worth fighting for, and the Liberal Party seemed to be the best way to go. What was the machinery behind winning the general 2015 elections? How many doors did you have to knock on? Because I know that your region was very conservative and you were with the Liberals.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you did your homework on this one. Definitely very conservative. The former person that was the member of parliament was the Minister of Finance, very loved. Himself and his wife were both politicians, a minister at the federal level, conservative, and a member of provincial parliament, conservative. So the entire riding was conservative. And people said to me at the door, well, first of all, you can't win because, I mean, who are you? We've never heard of you before. You're going up against like Jim Flaherty. He happened to pass away, but at the time it was like, you're going up against Jim Flaherty's ghost. It's never going to happen. Number two, we've never elected a Black woman in a person of color in Whitby ever. And number three, honey, you're liberal. It's not going to work. And so, and then they would say to me, even if you are elected, you're gonna change when you get in there. You're gonna, be a different person. And I just said, watch me. At the doors, I knocked on at least 40,000 doors. And I was sure to tell them, oh man, when you knock on 40,000 doors, it's like the workout of a lifetime. I looked so good. Fitting into all these amazing dresses and outfits. And so you knock on those doors, and I was saying to people, you know what? Just give me your trust. I'm smart. I care about my community. I'm here because I want to make sure we have a national brain strategy. I've done the research. I've published reports looking at the first phase of what we could do if we had a national strategy. The investment from the previous government. I co-chaired that study. Let's see how we could build it going forward. Celina, you're liberal. Don't worry about Celina being liberal. Celina is Celina. And Celina is going to challenge our own policy as well as the policy across the bench. I'm not just going to take what is given and, just be spoon-fed. I'm going to be critically thinking about it. And I said, trust me, at the end of this, I will not change. I'll be the same person that showed up on your door today. I'll be the same person 4 years from now. And that strategy, people admired. They admired knowing that the person that came to the door, if they said that they didn't like a particular liberal policy and I didn't like it either, I'd say, yeah, I didn't like that policy either. And they would look at me like, what? You're allowed to say that? I said, of course I'm allowed to say that. I don't have to like everything that the liberals do. I do like some conservative policies, and that's okay as well. So I was very honest at the door. I was authentically myself. So knocking on those 40,000 doors, I remember I lost the by-election when Flaherty passed away, knocked on about 20,000 more doors the next time around, and won the general election because people trusted me. And there was no way that I was going to allow any situation to make them lose their trust and their faith in me, because their trust and their faith came in that vote. And they had to know that I was going to use that vote properly.
So far, so good. What was the first incident when you figured that what you got into was not functioning how you thought it was, or that it was not where you wanted to stay? What was the first friction in your line of work?
Yeah, I would say that the first bit of evidence around, things not going right. So immediately elected in October of 2015, immediately appointed as parliamentary secretary to the prime minister. So PSPM, I'm like the head parliamentary secretary, right? And it's amazing. There's only been a couple of Black women who have been the parliamentary secretary to the prime minister, and I'm like the second one. Both of them are from Grenada. Both of them are Black women. Like it's crazy. And so I'm the second, and I'm feeling awesome about this. And I go into my first meeting, and I'm hearing all of this talk. The cabinet was named, and we have 184 members of parliament who are elected within our government. It's a majority government. It's like we swept the nation. It was just amazing results. But the people who were there were sometimes longtime liberals. They had been members of parliament for a long time. So they expected to get positions in cabinet. And when they didn't, I was hearing all of this rumbling. Like, people were not happy with Trudeau, even with the win and even with the cabinet being announced. And they were saying that, that he picked his friends to be in cabinet. And so when I had my first meeting with him in December of 2015, we sat down, very cordial. It was very nice. I was wearing like cute outfit and little pink flower. I remember it perfectly. And he says, "Do you trust my judgment?" And I'm like, dude, I hardly know you. What? So I said, no. Because I'm expecting, if I have someone as my right-hand person, you better be honest with me. Like, I want you to be honest. And after I said that, I noticed like there was a little bit of a tension in the room. And so he said, why? And I said, well, because, people are complaining that you picked your friends to be in cabinet as opposed to, people who could possibly do a better job. So I had a reason for sort of saying, I'm not quite sure if I'm trusting what's going on here. And then so the conversation went on, and I said, look, let me just tell you something right away. If you're looking to fill any gender or racial gaps in your cabinet by appointing me, choose someone else, because I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to be a token. And he said, oh, no, Celina, no, that's not going to happen. And then spent the next year making me a token.
Do you trust me? I heard you say that on some other podcasts. I think I don't know, I was almost impressed by the audacity, because even in interpersonal relationships, trust is not an immediate transaction, it's earned through consistency. So he literally just circumvented the whole organic development of trust, and he framed it as an expectation rather than a process. I think it really signals a transactional approach to leadership, trust in exchange for perceived opportunity or inclusion, right? So it wasn't about relational depth, but it was about what? Operational efficiency, right? So what do you think he was looking for? Someone to just go with the flow and have a yes woman at his side? Do you think that's why he asked, to see if you're going to be someone who's going to be liable and like a part of him, almost like having you as an extension of himself?
First of all, let me just pause for your listeners to just rewind that piece that you just said, because it was brilliant. You're absolutely right. Trust is a process. It is not an operational procedure. And you hit the nail right on the head. And I think you're the first person that I've interviewed with that actually got it. Like, why that was so important for me to just be like, absolutely not. Dude, who are you? I don't care if your name is Trudeau. I don't care if you're the prime minister. You got here the exact same way I did. I had to knock on 40,000 doors. I had to sell myself in front of 40,000 people and their families. And I got here the same way you did. The only difference between me and you, honey, is the title above your head. There's actually no difference. The process was exactly the same. And you now implying that because of your title above your head, that I am supposed to just say, oh yes, I trust your judge. I've never experienced having to deal with your judgments. I didn't know if it was so embarrassing for him or it was like are you thinking that I'm stupid? Like, what makes you think that I will say yes to this? And so your analysis is spot on. It was an operational transaction to say, are you on board with me? Now, if he just asked me that question, if he said, are you on board with me, Celina? I'd say, yeah, let's ride, let's go. But he asked me if I trusted his judgment, and that's a different question for me. And I'm, as your parliamentary secretary, need to be honest with you and say, no, I don't trust your judgment. First of all, because you're asking me that stupid question.
What was his reaction?
The energy changed in the room. It's like they weren't expecting me to say no.
For people with with intersecting identities, everything they do is political. I remember you talking about going along to get along. So at the beginning, when you were new to this, did you like deliberately decided not to make too much noise and ruffle feathers? Did you kind of like stay behind? What was your strategy?
I didn't have a strategy because I thought I was in a liberal government that was a feminist government that believed in diversity is our straight. I thought that was intersectional feminism. There's my naivety right there. So I was very naive. So I thought, look, you want me because you know my track record, you know that I have grit, you know I could lose, get back up and win again. And when I lost, I had the toughest breakdown. I was in bed for 2 months with major depressive disorder. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't wash my hair. I wouldn't brush my teeth. I was like down and out. I got back up, got back on my feet, knocked some more doors, and won a general election. That doesn't happen because someone doesn't have the capacity. That happens because someone has some grit, some determination, some resilience, and some perseverance. And so that's what I thought they wanted. So I didn't think I had to make myself smaller in the boxing ring. I thought they wanted me to come out swinging. And that's not what they wanted. They wanted someone who trusted his judgment and did what they were told. And so as I progressed over those 4 years, I just stopped. I just started saying, you know what? You want something that I'm not going to give you, so I'm just going to be myself. And good luck.
You guys in the US have a debt that has grown to 1 trillion in the past 3 months, while your economy only grew by 5.5 trillion in the past 3 years. How's that one for you? I can offer you a degree of safety against inflation. You can now be less miserable about the prices, which seem to always rise more than expected, as the inflation just won't go away. Look, the government isn't going to take care of you, so forget the protests and do it yourself. Take matters into your own hands is what successful people do. I decided to help my audience shelter their assets and diversify them into gold, which is something that has always been used by the rich to preserve wealth throughout the history. Birch Gold Group makes the process straightforward. They can help you convert your existing IRA or a 401k account into a tax-advantaged physical gold IRA without any of the out-pocket costs. Just text Captainese to 989898 and receive their free info kit on gold IRAs that is packed with insider information on how gold and silver can protect your savings. I've checked out their references before partnering with them, and their endorsements include Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Ron Paul, and I trust these people. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, Gold now has 5-star reviews and thousands of happy customers. Birch Gold Group is the nation's #1 gold IRA provider. To learn more, text Captainese to 989898 and claim your free info kit on gold IRAs. You also have the link in the description below. What were some things that you were invited to, like national or international events? I assume the White House dinner?
Well, yeah. Well, that was during the first year. So during the first year as being parliamentary secretary to the prime minister, again, for those listening who don't understand what a parliamentary secretary is, a parliamentary secretary is basically like the right-hand person, right? You go left, the prime minister goes right. Prime minister goes north, you go south. Like you're just covering, you're giving your message all over, and you're just, another person that could do that for him. And during that first year, he did so many international events. And I was invited to 3. international events. And at the end of the year, I resigned as parliamentary secretary to the prime minister. And I'll tell you why. Because the first event I was invited to was the state dinner at the White House with the last year of the Obama administration. And everybody knows I wanted to meet Obama, like, the first Black president, of course. And so he said, yeah, you could come down to the state dinner, but you're not invited to dinner. You're just invited to meet the president on the White House lawn, the South Lawn, with like all the staff. So I'm like the only elected official that's not part of the official like delegation. I'm just sort of by myself. So that didn't sit right with me. Then the second event I was invited to was the opening of the National African American Museum in Washington, which was cool. Like I was sitting behind Oprah, like it was cool. I had, the prime minister's seat. But then I started thinking like, this doesn't smell right. And then the last event I was invited to was the inauguration of the Prime Minister of Ghana, Akufo-Addo. I was invited to that event. And at the end, I was like, 3 events, and they're all Black-focused events. I didn't get invited to anything else. I wasn't allowed to speak in the House of Commons to answer questions on behalf of the Prime Minister, which is what a parliamentary secretary does when he's not there. Like there was all of these things that I just said, you know what? I told you right from the beginning, do not pick me to fill any gender or racial gaps. And that is exactly what you did. And so, yeah, no, bye. Like my conviction, my moral conviction, my ethics, my integrity are worth way more than a paycheck and way more than some title as parliamentary secretary to a prime minister. Like, no, I will resign from that easy. And I think for your listeners, I think that is where your compass lies when you have to make these decisions. Like, do you stay or do you go? Your gut will tell you, but also your values, your beliefs, your principles will guide that. And Clayton Christensen wrote an essay called How Will You Measure Your Life? I invite people to read it because if you stand in your principles 98% of the time, you'll regret it. If you just say, oh, just this one time, I'm going to just, cheat. Just this one time, I'm going to, not do something that's right, that I don't feel right about. You have to stand by your values and principles 100% of the time. Otherwise, you are just going to fall for everything if you can't stand up for the things that you believe in.
It's easier to hold your values and principle 100% of the time than it is 98. See, I really I never underestimated the elimination of ambiguity, because I think that life and human mind, as complex as it is, having no negotiation wiggle room with yourself, which is a slippery slope when you're only at 98, right? It simplifies your life so much, you create this mental shortcut. That 2% wiggle room for rationalization is not worth the mental energy that's required to debate it, right? So you have to debate it and then justify it and then bargain with yourself. It's not energy efficient at all. It's not. I'm all about efficiency, and this is not worth it. I also think that you can only respect a person consciously or subconsciously when you know that if you push them past their limit, they will turn around and walk and never look back. And I think that even for people who want to go along to get along all the time, I think that it backfires. I talked about people pleasing in some other episodes, but you're boiling on the inside after a while, and it shows. And it's a behavioral version of uncanny valley effect. People know that something ain't quite right. And I think that, and it goes to show how much people really value authenticity. So even if you want to go along all the time, at the end of the day, you're not going to get along. So, so you might as well be authentic. Were you also, when you had a speech, could you create your own speech, or would Trudeau write it down and tell you what to do? And was there also like an interference in your speeches? Because I know, by the way, when one politician, like in a certain party, creates a tweet, I see many similar tweets after that, and I go down the rabbit hole. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Where's the authenticity?
So in the beginning, yes, I everything that they gave me, I would just repeat it. And then after that first year in 2017, I said, yeah, forget it. I'm not doing that anymore. Because it was so, and it wasn't Trudeau, but like the briefing notes would come from staffers or whatever when I had to make speeches. So I remember once after leaving parliamentary secretary as prime minister, I was parliamentary secretary to international development and traveling all over the world. And I remember them giving me one speech in this particular context, and I read it, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I can't say this. Like, I actually know the history of this country. Like, I can't say this. This is terrible. Who wrote this? And I just started saying, forget it, I'm just going to write my own speeches. Not a good idea. In politics, I was at the economics club the first time I did it. I was at the economics club. I was invited because the minister could not attend. They asked me to go in, and they gave me the speech that the minister had signed off on. And at the time, I was going through some, really public challenge, and people were saying, I'm the worst MP. They were calling for me to resign because, again, I was standing up in my principles. And I changed the end of the speech, and I said, you know what? Come for me. I'm not going anywhere. You could do what you want. You could say what you want. I could be a one-term MP, and that is okay. But I'm going to continue to fight for my community. I'm going to continue to fight for people that I serve, and I'm going to do it with integrity and honesty. And so I changed the whole ending of the speech, and it was like, it was the worst. You can't get rid of me. You're stuck with me for 4 years. So I'm gonna make sure that I represent the people of Whitby. I'm gonna make sure that I represent the people that I serve. My boss was never Justin Trudeau. It was always the people that elected me, and I made sure that everybody knew that.
You were as a parliamentary secretary. You were supposed to have a close relationship with Trudeau. So how close were you really?
It's interesting because the relationship for me needed to be very professional, and it needed to be like we needed to get work done. And I think that's where I'm really, it's really disappointing to know that we didn't even have the ability to do that because I don't think I was valued. Would I go have a beer right now with Trudeau? Sure, I could have a beer with the guy. But would I follow him as a leader, as someone who I could respect in leadership? Absolutely not. So yeah, we could be friends. We could have a beer, and I don't drink beer, so like we could have a prosecco.
But him as a person, do you think he's misinformed? I think okay, so I think I don't want to diagnose him as a narcissist, although I did in the past because I'm grandiose, I just diagnose people. But to play the devil's advocate, I assume that when you gain power, you have less and less people around you holding you accountable. You have more yes men around you. So when you're surrounded by a bunch of yes men, I think many of us would get lost, and as you gain power, this risk of losing accountability grows. So when you're surrounded by these people who only agree with you, there's no one to challenge your decision or offer like honest feedback. And then this isolation can lead to poor choices that are inflated by self-importance and disconnect from reality. And without this accountability, it's really easy to lose sight of your values and then make misguided decisions and ultimately just totally lost touch with reality or people or causes that gave you power in the first place. Um, do you think it's yeah, yeah. Do you think that was going too much against him? Do you think he didn't surround himself with not competent people because they seem to be competent, but too much yes people who he selected based on trusting him basically? Do you think that was his mistake, or is he like just too narcissistic to figure out anything else?
Yeah, so I've always said that he lacks the self-awareness. I don't know what the diagnosis is, but I think that he lacks the self-awareness because if we understand how the brain works and motivated cognition, you're always going to, or your brain is always going to want to find evidence to support how great you are, right? So you're going to be scanning your environment and your brain is going to say, this cup is here because Celina is the best thing ever. The cup has nothing to do with me, but the brain says this cup has something to do with me. And so when our brains are doing that, are programmed to do that, we develop various biases. So confirmation bias says that this cup is for me, right? So you have all these biases, anchoring biases, confirmation biases, availability biases that actually feed your energy. The self-awareness part of you then says, I need to make sure that if everybody's telling me that this cup, which seems pretty arbitrary, is here specifically for me, I need to find the one person that tells me, hello, no, it's not. I need to find the one Celina in the room who's going to tell me the truth. And if you don't have the self-awareness to do that, to check your biases, to understand how you're motivated in your regular life, whether that's by power, that's by position, that's by title, that's by money, whatever it is that motivates you. If you're not able to then check how is that motivation impacting the biases that I have, which ultimately will impact every decision. So we saw in that administration, Trudeau having problems with SNC-Lavalin. Scandal after scandal after scandal. It manifested in it didn't just manifest with me. It manifested in big national decisions. So your inability to check your own biases, to have the self-awareness, the self-regulation, and dare I say the whole emotional intelligence package, the motivation, the social skill, the empathy, to be able to lead in that way will cause a lot of problems, and we saw Trudeau have many problems in that administration and beyond.
Yeah, self-awareness is the antidote to bias. How did other tokens cope with their positions in your experience? Actually, I think it's fair for just the audience for me to explain. Tokenism in politics is a superficial inclusions of individuals that are of underrepresented group, right? So it's often for appearances or claiming to be diversified, right? Without genuinely empowering or addressing the issues faced by these groups, right? So it's more about creating a symbolic gesture than actually real effect. So it's diversity without inclusion, basically, right? Yeah. So how did other tokens cope?
Well, you know what? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call them tokens because I was never a token, right? So I think there was a lot of individuals with multiple intersecting identities that were really powerful, strong women. And I could think of, Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was at the center of that SNC-Lavalin scandal, a powerful woman who just stood her ground. Jane Philpott, who stood her ground right beside her. Eva Nassef left the party after being bullied. Leona Alislev, she left across the floor early in the Trudeau mandate. Like, people forget, there are all of these women. Leona was, in the military, decorated military official. All of these women, Jane Philpott, a medical doctor. Jody was a Indigenous lawyer. All of these very powerful women at some point said, yeah, no, we are good without you, right? And the challenge with that then becomes, especially in a political environment, and I'm not saying that any other person did this, but human nature would say that somebody will fill in that gap. If Celina leaves, there's a whole line of women who are waiting to say, or people who are waiting to say, oh, I could fill that role, right? But the caveat is, if you fill that role, then now you have to say, well, Trudeau's a great guy. I don't know what the heck's wrong with Celina. Look at me. I'm here. I'm doing well. And so it vilifies. It does, instead of just acknowledging, yes, your experience could have been different. It could have been something different. It is erased. And that is problematic.
I think it's a very complex situation, because I think that just psychologically people are more likely to hire people who look like them. Also, I think that after DEI training, people are less likely to interact with people who are not like them, because it's like a minefield. When you learn about all the microaggressions, I better not talk to Shaniqua because I might say something wrong. You know what I mean? But this may be a weird question, but how do I frame this? Do you think? Okay, so I think there can be some soft tokenism in our lives, incentives like one diverse Black book a month, programs in school that expose children to stories outside of their cultural framework. I remember having 10 Barbies that were white and deciding to get a Black Barbie just so that I can have a Black Barbie that I then never played with. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's psychological. Is tokenism always wrong, or can it be used, hypothetically speaking, as like a first foot in the door, like a starting point, like as a means to an end instead of the end? Can it be a slappy way to start to shift the norm? And it throws the baby out with the bathwater, but maybe there isn't much more to do sometimes. You know what I mean? Can it be like a rough step so that someone enters at least?
No, absolutely not. If we look at research on mechanistic dehumanization is where you place something in a spot and you use it sort of like it's like a cog in a wheel. You don't really care for it. You just have it there, and it's the utilitarian. It's to say that you have it, but you don't really want to use it for any kind of. You're not really invested in making sure that it's taken care of and it's good and it's nurtured and it's okay. It is just a machine. It's just a thing that is no longer human. It's just a thing that you have. And when we just think of, and I believe tokenism is a type of mechanistic dehumanization, where you just place someone in a position because you've stripped them of their humanity and you just want. Remember, race is a socially constructed thing. Gender is a social construct. It is not who I am. It is not my identity. It is a socially constructed way in which you can identify me. It is not my humanness. So when you are using me for those things that are socially constructed, you have essentially stripped me of my humanization. The second point is when you look at research done by Bruneau, Bruneau, their research shows that there are different parts of the brain that dehumanize and like. So you could like Celina and still dehumanize Black women. So it's the thing like, oh, I have a Black friend. Look, I have Celina. She's my Black friend here. But then you put together policy or you put together programs that disenfranchise everybody that looks like Celina. And then you say, oh, but I have Celina. She's my Black, she's my girl. There are two different parts of your brain that do that. And so it's a very, 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 very slippery slope when we say, well, let's just do this and just have it there, because all you're doing is reinforcing tokenism. How do you do it differently? You actually appreciate the person, the doll, the whatever that is there, and make sure that that person has the space to use their skills, to use their experience, to tell their story, to change the policy, to raise their hand and say, no, that's not going to work, to challenge you. That's what you want. And if you're not doing that, if you're not inclusive, then please just get rid of it altogether. It cannot. I just find it's a dangerous place if we're gonna just put someone there and hope that minds will change.
Especially because now everyone else will think, oh, that's not even a capable person. They're just there because they're a token, right? So now at some point in your work, you said to your partner, the gloves are coming off. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that was September of 2017. So I'd finished my term as parliamentary secretary to the prime minister. I didn't finish. I quit my term, or I left. I'm very specific. And then I was, working on some other things, and I recognized that I was being excluded from a number of different meetings that the Liberals were having related to Black community, related to things that I was interested in, and I was just being excluded. And I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to do this my own way, because I'm not going to spend the next 3 years apologizing for who I am, playing small and regressing when I know that I could advance. Yeah, I could advance different policy going forward. So, and my husband was like, "Oh gosh, babe, like you're gonna put both gloves? Both gloves are coming off, just one at a time." And I was like, "No," and that's when I changed the minister's speech and started writing my own. I started, my own tweets. I started I showed up. That's when I started to show up. And I knew it would come at a cost, but I also knew that it would be more detrimental to me to not show up than it would be if I tried to regress or to hide myself more.
You had this courtesy call with Trudeau to tell him that you were no longer running for 2019 election. How did you think he would respond, and what actually happened?
Oh no, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your show.
Oh, please, you're allowed to do whatever you want. I swear all the time. I'm holding back during this episode. Trust me. You're fine.
Yes, I had a call with him. I thought he was just going to say, thank you for your service. You had a rough time, but we delivered on our mandate. Blah 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 blah. No, I called, and he was going through the SNC Lavalin scandal with Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould, and he said to me, "Oh no, you can't announce that you're not running again, because I can't have two powerful women of color leave at the same time." And I said, "Yeah, okay, but I hope you recognize the challenge that I had in this job, like death threats to me, death threats to my children. Like, I had everything that could possibly happened. And so I said, I know you may not recognize this now, today or tomorrow, but at some time, I hope you recognize what this job has cost me in, doing this." And he's like, "Oh, Celina, he started going off like I needed to appreciate him. What are you talking about? I never did anything for you." And I was just like, dude, I'm not saying you never did anything for me. I said, I hope you could appreciate, not today or tomorrow, but at some time, just appreciate the impact that this job has had on me and my family. He started going on again about his privilege. "Oh, I was also, have problems." And I'm like, "But you have protective service. Like, I don't." In my head, I'm thinking that. And then finally, he just kept going at me like a child. And then I said, "Motherfucker, who the fuck do you think you're speaking to?" Like, my mind was like, the fuck are you talking about? And I think it startled him, because I just went in. I said, "Nobody talked to you about your privilege. Nobody talked to you about that you didn't help or do anything to me. I am telling you that I'm no longer running because of the stuff that I went through because of you, and because of some of the things that happened within our party. And you want to talk to me about the fact that I don't respect that you helped me? Motherfucker, get the fuck out of here." Like,
Trudeau was like a blue chip investor hearing 2 black women are resigning. Do I have enough diversity in my stock portfolio to survive this? Okay, but can we keep one for the Instagram photo? You see, just psychologically, his comment about not being able to lose 2 black women at once really hints at the reliance on social validation, this need for visible markers of exclusivity that align with societal expectations of leadership, and I guess it also suggests insecurity about how leadership will be perceived. The diversity is no longer visually represented. So his fear isn't just about the loss of 2 competent individuals. It's about the potential unraveling of an image that plays a pivotal role in maintaining his public and political identity. So additionally, his reaction may also indicate this cognitive dissonance between his progressive values and the reality of his leadership decisions. Okay, so after that, you received a quite a backlash in the media. I know after leaving office, it was not easy to find a job. And after that phone call, you went to him again and said, "Let's be adults. Let's, we both said something we didn't mean. Let's move it aside." And you described his reaction as, again, the energy in the room changing and you being intimidated by his reaction. So you know he can make and break whatever to your career after that, right? And also make you not work in Canada's government ever again. So what does he do? What does he do after that? I think he was tweeting something and then that there's an opening spot and you replied back. What was that about? Just tell us about that.
Yeah, so after the SNC scandal, he said that he was going to go out to Canadians and apologize for, the kerfuffle. And he was basically saying to Canadians that his office was open and welcoming, basically trying to say that what Jody was saying about him, that she was lying, is essentially what he was saying in that statement. My office is open, and if anybody wanted to come talk to me, they could come talk to me about anything. And I was like, what? Excuse me, sir? So I'm sitting there with my phone, and he's speaking live on TV. And I'm like, there is no way I'm going to let him get away with this. So I start tweeting, that is absolutely not true. Do you remember how you treated me when I came to speak to you twice? So even after that phone call, he was even worse the next time I went to see him. So I said, twice you did that. And I tweeted that. And I knew at that moment it was done for me because I challenged a prime minister publicly. But again, I just wanted to make sure that people knew.
All right. Well, I think you have to go. Tell me, where can people find you?
Everywhere on all socials at I am Celina Celina CC. And yeah, I'm everywhere.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. That was an amazing conversation. I could talk to you for hours, Celina.